This week, on the sidetrack, a 1986 film that would become the biggest box office success of the calendar year. A film that can aptly be described by the following words as written by a famous poet, a bon vivant, a man whose skill at weaving phrase was unparalleled. To wit, his words: "Revving up your engine, listen to her howl and roar. Metal under tension, begging you to touch and go. Highway to the danger zone. Ride into the danger zone." At the time, it seems truer words were never spoken about this blockbuster film entitled none other than Top Gun. That's this week on the sidetrack. If you know anything about me, you know that the era of the 80s is the equivalent of a weighted blanket of entertainment for me, as is the case for so many people. If you look at the landscape of entertainment over the last decade or two, you'll see plainly in the product that's being produced, whether it be something like Stranger Things or Hot Tub Time Machine, or a variety of television shows that are revisiting a decade that I think many of us feel so at home with, from the music to the culture to the faces of the performers that embodied that decade. It is an era that I would not mind spending the rest of my life in. The 80s is that to me. But clearly, it is also an era that contained so many successful original films that on the sidetrack, we're finding ourselves over and over again revisiting that decade. And one of the reasons for that is that the majority of the films that were released over that decade represented original IP, ideas that were not based on books, comic books, reboots, remakes. If you look at the top 10 box office titles over any summer in the 80s and compare it with the same summers in the last decade or two, you'll see the difference. 9 out of 10 movies in the 80s were original ideas, and in our last couple decades, 9 out of 10 are based on some other property we've already seen before. So perhaps that's why we keep coming back to this decade, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't make for some great entertainment while we're all doing our best to sit in our homes and be productive and keep our minds off some of the other stuff that's going on. So this week, we're grateful to have screenwriter and producer Fabian Marquez joining us. We'll talk to Fabian in a moment, but just a few tidbits about the man himself. He's known for co-writing the Sundance hit Better Luck Tomorrow, directed by Justin Lin. In addition, he also wrote Johnny Flynton, a short that was nominated for an Academy Award, and most recently working as a writer and producer on the television series Spides. So we'll be sitting down with Fabian and here to talk about the classic, the revenue-generating behemoth of 1986, Top Gun. So here we are with the man who chose Top Gun as his ultimate audio commentary film, Mr. Fabian Marquez. Fabian, how are you?
Hey, Paul. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
What is that?
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, I shouldn't even call you Mr. Fabian Marquez because we actually have known each other for some time. Fabian and I, back in the day, began our Hollywood journeys in the hallowed halls of none other than New Line Cinema, which was kind of like college after college, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it was like graduate school.
Graduate school for drinking, perhaps?
For drinking? I mean, that was a wild time to be at New Line Cinema.
I'll never forget. There was wasn't there like a Premiere Magazine article about
Oh
the
yeah.
parties and about Mike DeLuca and the.
Yeah, but we don't mention that anymore.
Well, I've said we did a commentary before with Eddie Schmidt, who also I think he worked in post production also at New Line, where you started. Yes.
Yeah, we overlapped briefly.
Yeah, but it's funny when you think about you come to Hollywood and there's different ways that people kind of find their crews. There's the folks that start working in the agency mailrooms, and that's one thing. There's the folks who went to USC and kind of keep in contact with those folks. There's people from particular colleges that seemingly have their own mafia of sorts in town and stick together. And then there's places like New Line Cinema where you look at who was there when we were there, not to date ourselves, but to know that like Donna Langley, who heads up Universal, was one desk away from me. And, upstairs is Toby Emmerich, who was in music, who now is running Warner Brothers. Wick Godfrey, Mike DeLuca. I mean, it's a pretty significant list of people, including, of course, us.
Yeah, and lots of people who got their starts there, like you and I both know Jude Wang,
Yes.
who was in the music department there, and now she's tremendous filmmaker and director.
It was a great experience. So the question, I know these answers, but the people out there won't, which is why I'm asking. For you, you came to Hollywood, and what was the ultimate goal when you came here?
I wanted to be a screenwriter, out and out. That was my primary motivation coming out of school. I went to it wasn't a proper film. It was more of a film studies program, but I guess you could say it was a film school, right? UCI.
Yeah. They did show films.
They showed films. We talked about films, and yeah, so it was just close enough to LA and Hollywood. To make you yearn for it, to feel like, you could feel the gravitational pull, but far enough away that, you had this like neutral space to kind of figure things out. And what I figured out was I really wanted to write screenplays. I think I probably went in a little bit more open. I didn't know if I wanted to direct or what part of the business I wanted to be into, but I think it was the process of undergraduate, that I really fell in love with screenwriting. And, getting to New Line Cinema, I actually landed in the post-production department, which is about as far away from screenwriting as you could get. It's the polar opposite side of the business. But actually, I thought that was weirdly, complementary, and it filled in a huge gap in my knowledge of the filmmaking process at that level. But anyway, I digress. I mean, it was all about writing scripts when I wasn't, kind of doing the day job at New Line.
And so for you, what was that defining moment of, anybody that comes to this town that wants to write, there's years of, oh, hey, somebody's reading my script, or, oh, hey, somebody likes this or that. And we all have in our minds, there's a moment where we can finally celebrate because something very significant has occurred. And for you, what was that moment where you finally felt like, okay, so maybe this is something that I can really do something with?
Yeah, you have all these little nibbles and sort of like interesting little mini evolutions along the way. Disney had the Disney Fellowship, and I'd become a quarterfinalist, and I thought that was a big deal. But for me, it was I linked up with a childhood friend, Justin Lin, who had made some documentaries and had co-directed a small indie film, and he and I were talking about scripts, and we started collaborating together. And he brought me on to help him write a script called Better Luck Tomorrow, and then his full intention was to make it, and I was just so captivated by his passion. He decided that he was just going to put it all on the line in terms of just, he had this sort of amazing dedication and drive to make it no matter what. And that's just so, seductive. It's really easy to want to get behind somebody who's just hell bent on a goal. And in this case, it was a script that we were writing together. So even more reason. So I ended up quitting my job at New Line Cinema as soon as we raised a little bit of money. Wasn't very much. It was like credit card money. But I left New Line Cinema to go make Better Luck Tomorrow with Justin and go on that journey with him.
And how long of a shoot was that movie?
A shoot? I think it was about 60 days.
Wow.
I'm sorry. No, cut that in half.
I was going to say.
No, that's like a normal movie.
That's like Mission Impossible 4.
No. Sorry. It was like a third. It was like 22 or 24 days.
Yeah.
We did some pickups in post, but principal photography was in the 20s.
And so, okay, because as I mentioned at the top of the show, that was a Sundance. It got into Sundance. What was that the initial goal, and what did that feel like? Typically, people are waiting around in the fall, right before they say, if it gets to Thanksgiving and you haven't heard that you're in Sundance, you're not getting into Sundance. But do you remember that moment when you guys found out you got into Sundance? Like, did you get the call? Where were you? What were you doing? What was that moment?
Well, we weren't sort of putting all on the line for Sundance, even though we all secretly in our heart of hearts, we all really, really wanted it. But we had kind of talked ourselves into this idea that, hell or high water, the movie was going to get distributed. And we had a plan in place to do what they call four-walling,
right?
Where you basically, you put up the money and you buy out a movie theater for a week or 2 weeks and you do all the promote. Basically, you distribute the film yourself.
Yeah.
And we had a few references and a few comps of what that would look like. And we had a pretty, what we thought was a pretty well thought out business strategy. So in our minds, it kind of like enabled us. It's like going for the hot chick. You're like, you really, really want her to like you. And you're going to ask her to the prom. But if she turns you down, you have this, it's not a big deal. It's not going to ruin your life.
You're still swiping left and right while you're waiting for her to answer.
Exactly. So, we applied to Sundance, of course, wanting to get in, of course, wanting to take that trip to the big leagues. But we consoled ourselves preemptively with the thought that it was all going to be okay if we got rejected. No big deal. So, but then, my God, like I remember for the longest time I had it like saved. I'm sure I have it somewhere in my files, but I have the call from Justin, literally just getting off the phone with John Cooper, the programmer of Sundance at that time,
right?
Telling him that he had gotten in, and just you can hear it in this guy's voice, the palpable excitement, and it was like, oh my God, and literally you can see your life in slow motion pivoting on a dime from I was going down this street, and all of a sudden, sharp right turn, we're heading up this mountain that we really hadn't counted on materializing. So it was amazing. And then everything from, it was a great Thanksgiving, of course. We talk about sitting on the table. What are you thankful for? And then the next 3 months, just that ride to prepare to get to Sundance, and then the actual event and what followed shortly thereafter was just one of the most thrilling moments of my whole life.
And I don't know that we've ever talked about this before, but so the movie premieres at Sundance, and then you have that, the excitement around it, and people, want to come talk to you about the film and offer to release it. Like, what does that night feel like? You've got sales agents. I think you guys had Sloss. John Sloss was working for you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. We had Sloss and Cinetic representing us along with Jeff Dowd. It was a weird team up where John Sloss, who's this polished godfather of indie film, teamed up with this rogue operative named Jeff Dowd, who most people know him now as the inspiration for the Coen brothers on The Big Lebowski. And I think that's how he makes most of his money these days, is he goes to like Lebowski conventions. And
was he carrying around a carton of milk while you were negotiating?
We have some stories about that guy. He was the dude, and that was his nickname. They called him the dude. And Jeff Dowd had represented the Coen brothers early on, which is how they knew him so well.
How fun.
So it was Dowd and Sloss and trying to shop this really quirky little indie film that was it was like an all-American teenage crime film starring an all Asian American cast. It was very unique.
Well, and was it one of John Cho's first movies?
Yeah, it was. And well, he was sort of the most famous actor in our cast. So he had done some stuff. I think he was like in an episode of Buffy and
Right.
and no, at that time he was already known as the MILF guy from American Pie.
Oh, that's right.
Uh,
Okay.
Everyone knew him as the kid at the party who was like MILF, MILF. So, whenever we were out in public with him in production, pre-production, people would scream MILF at us, and we'd realize that John was somewhere behind us. But yeah, I mean, the biggest actor we had in the cast was the guy that played the Beeve in Leave It to Beaver. We had Jerry Mathers.
That's right.
Who did a cameo as a biology teacher.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a cast of unknowns, unknown director. We made the movie on a shoestring. It was we shot it on film, which is a lot more expensive, of course.
What's that called?
Yeah, it's this thing called celluloid. I don't know. You got to Wikipedia
Film?
it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Not just for your teeth.
That's right.
It's
and it's sold to MTV.
Yes, Paramount and MTV bought it, distributed it domestically.
I almost hope that somebody chooses that for one of the weeks because it's a super cool film, and I don't know how prevalent folks that are kind of out of the typical indie film scene know about that film or aware of that film. But Better Luck Tomorrow, it's pretty great. Is it streaming somewhere now? Where can people find it?
Jeez, that is a really good question.
We may have to look. I'll do the research and we'll let people know where they can see it. So that movie comes out, and then you continue to kind of like plug away. You write, you co-write, or did you write solely Johnny Flynton, which was nominated for an Academy Award for short film?
Yeah. So in the intervening time between when we premiered at Sundance with Better Luck Tomorrow and when we released, which unfortunately was like a year.
Yeah.
It took about a year because they wanted Paramount, MTV wanted to take it on the festival circuit and get some word of mouth. So it was an excruciating year before our film would get its guaranteed, contractually guaranteed release. But through Jeff Dowd, the dude, he introduced me to a young filmmaker named Lexi Alexander, who was trying to make a short film about a boxer, kind of loosely based on a tragic true story about a boxer who was convicted of murdering his wife, but it wasn't murder. It was sort of a really tragic accident.
Okay.
So it was this real tragic story, and Better Luck Tomorrow is kind of a serious drama and had some tragic elements to it. So they thought I was a good fit. He introduced me to Lexi, and we hit it off. And I helped her write that script, and she went off and shot it. And with Dash Mehook, great actor, great character actors, still out there chewing up the scenery. And then lo and behold, it qualified for the Oscars, and then it got shortlisted. And the next thing you know, it was nominated for Best Short Live Action.
So that must be, while Sundance is a great call, what is this call?
Right, exactly. I mean, actually, that was probably like an email.
Right.
It wasn't quite as thrilling to get the news, not quite as dramatic, but still, I mean, come on. I mean,
that's amazing.
It was amazing. It was an amazing year because, just from a personal standpoint, my wife and I, it was the year we started a family. That my wife was pregnant with our first child as the Academy Award nomination came out and as Better Luck Tomorrow was getting released in the theater. And it was just kind of like everything, all my life's ambitions were all crashing in at the same 4-month period of time. It was kind of a remarkable period.
There's nothing more, nothing drives a man or woman more to success, as this is what I believe, than a family coming down the pike, right? Coming at you very quickly. You must find those successful opportunities. So clearly it had some part in that, perhaps.
Talk about motivation. Absolutely.
So when you look at films like Better Luck Tomorrow, you look at a movie like Johnny Flynton, there's a certain tone, genre to it. But then yet here we are today. Out of all of if someone were to say, here's Fabian Marquez, here are some of the things that he's known for, what movie do we think is going to inspire him? What movie do we think he's going to choose to talk about? Never in my wildest dreams do I pluck the largest revenue-generating film of 1986 off of that IMDb list and say, let's do Top Gun. So talk to me. Why Top Gun? What is it about this movie with you?
Talk to me, Goose.
Talk to me, Goose. You can be my wingman anytime, Fabian.
It's just a remarkable film. I mean, it's to me, weirdly, it really stands the test of time. If you watch it now, obviously there's some dated elements to it, but it's like an amazing story. This from a screenwriting perspective, it is an incredibly tight, efficient script. The economy of how it moves through the plot raises the stakes, constantly throws obstacles and setbacks into Tom Cruise's way. It's got humor, it's got tragedy. It was just this movie, and it came out in this year that was just populated by amazing films. Like that year to me was, it was maybe the year, in my life when I kind of woke up to the idea that films were things that people actually made. They didn't just magically materialize out of the ether. Like there were craftspeople that were behind it. And it was the year that, Jim Cameron released Aliens. It was Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out that year. Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School, Oliver Stone's Platoon, which was also another huge film for me. Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Like these were all massive, massive films for me personally.
Three Amigos.
No, really? Yes. Oh my God. That's another huge.
As well as Iron Eagle.
Which is strange because you would think that Iron Eagle would have come out like 2 or 3 years after Top Gun.
You would have thought. But you know what? It's like those things where like within 6 months, Big came out, Vice Versa came out, 18 again came out, the body switcheroo movies. It always seems to be, I think what happens in the industry is somebody loses out on a movie, on a pitch or a script, and they immediately try to develop something similar, and they seemingly seem to have come out around the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Baz Luhrmann's competing Alexander the Great project. I guess we'll never see the light of day. Yeah. So it was just that year, and then Top Gun was just sort of the shining star. I mean, I remember watching Risky Business a couple years before that. Like everyone, it kind of like came out of nowhere, became this like underdog, surprise hit, and that really kind of shined, the spotlight shone on Tom Cruise, and everyone was going, who's this guy? What a charming kid. And then just the star making turn, like, this is what made him a superstar. It's what made Meg Ryan go from total obscurity to becoming basically America's sweetheart a couple years later with When Harry Met Sally. And if you look back at that decade, there was so many remarkable movies, but Top Gun just, if you're of a certain age when that movie came out, like you wanted to be Maverick, you wanted to, live that life of adventure. And it's just like a roller coaster ride. It's just, it goes from strength to strength, constantly upping the ante. And it's just a thrilling film. I mentioned this in the commentary, but, it was like the best advertising campaign for the military.
Oh, for sure.
They saw like a 500% increase in recruitment after the film came out. And it's not, I'm not saying that necessarily is a huge strength that makes me want to endorse the film, but it just shows you the power of storytelling and motivating people to do something with their life, to kind of give them a call to action. You walked out of that movie just jacked on adrenaline. You wanted to get on the freeway and drive fast.
I mean, and I don't know if you end up talking about this. Maybe you do or don't. But just the fact also that this was a movie, just from a screenwriting perspective, this was the first movie that the pair of writers ever had made. This was their entrant into the industry. These guys from, I think it was a film student and his film professor from a college in Michigan. This was their movie that went.
Yeah. And it was really interesting because Jack Epps, he moved to Santa Monica, right after college and knocked around doing some TV work like on Kojak and Hawaii Five-0. But then he teams up with his old professor,
Yeah.
and this is pre-internet, and they had this program called Carbon Copy that they would use the modem to link their computers so that they can kind of collaborate live on scenes, which is kind of unheard of in 1980. What is 85, 84?
Probably 83, 84 when they wrote it.
Yeah, so they had a phone line for the modem and the Carbon Copy thing. They had a phone line so that they could talk to each other, and that's how they wrote the script. And they're the only credited writers on the movie. And it started with Jeffrey Katzenberg having a meeting with Epps and him picking the idea out of a list of films and just gravitating towards it because he liked aviation. He had his pilot's license. So it's just, from a screenwriting perspective, I'm really impressed with what these guys did. And, apparently the Navy had a lot of editorial control and input on the script, but in the end they only changed a few things for sort of factual inaccuracies. But largely, from what I understand, the script is pretty intact with what these guys came up with.
No, it's amazing.
Awesome.
And you wonder after that becomes, that's your first script that gets published. What happens to your ego? Like, does your ego start writing checks that your body can't cash?
Oh,
at some point? I had to say that. No, but those guys ended up coming out with Secret of My Success, Legal Eagles. Like, it's kind of interesting, and I'm sure we'll all listen to the commentary and find out more about their journey as well. But it's what a success story for two guys connecting their computers by a modem to collaborate and write this movie about flyboys.
Yeah, and it's a success story for a lot of folks. Tony Scott had a very famous brother who was already doing really well in Hollywood, but he was largely a commercial and music video director. He had made a film called The Hunger before, and it was good. It was kind of a critical success more than a financial success, and he kind of went back to stringing for his brother's production company, making commercials and music videos. Then he gets this opportunity, and you can just really feel how what a big deal that was for him. And he just puts it all out there. It's such an amazing, it's got elements of music video. It's got elements in the flash of commercials, but it's so much more. It's so much more elevated than just sort of a trivial kind of slick piece. It's got a lot more substance.
Well, I have not seen the movie in ages. We know that the sequel, Maverick, was slated, I think, for this year. It's been pushed at this point due to the COVID stuff, but that's coming. So this is a perfect time for folks who, God forbid, have never seen Top Gun. I mean, that's blasphemy. Or to revisit it and get a chance to hear you talk about the film for the entire length of the experience. So thank you for taking the time to do this. I appreciate you coming on and letting us dig a little bit deeper into your background in the space. I'll also mention that Fabian's most recent project is the television show Spides that you're a writer and a producer on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's airing internationally right now.
Yep, it's already played in the UK, in France, and Germany, and it's getting its US debut, I believe, through the platform Crackle. I'm not sure when that's going to launch, but it's slated to come out soon.
All right, Fabian. Well, thank you for joining us on the Sidetrack, and if everyone hangs out here just a moment, we'll dig in, get Top Gun queued up and ready to go, and we'll listen to Fabian Marquez's feature-length audio commentary of Top Gun. Thanks a lot, Fabian.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, if you're hearing some cool 80s music and seeing the Paramount logo, then welcome to the Sidetrack commentary for Top Gun. I'm screenwriter Fabian Marquez, and I'm very much a child of the 80s, and this movie had a lot of influence over me. Is it an art house film? No. Is it an indie? Absolutely not. This is like a high octane. This is like cinematic Red Bull. You just chug this and then you're just kind of ready to go out and take life by the horns. There is a small little typo on line 4. They use the word insure with an I when it should be with an E. The Navy didn't get an insurance policy here. They were trying to guarantee a result. Apparently the Navy also spells Top Gun as one word, not two. And while I'm at it, there's a conspicuous lack of female pilots because the Navy didn't have any female pilots in combat roles prior to 1993. In fact, the first graduate of Top Gun that was a woman didn't happen until 2004. But the good news is that in Top Gun Maverick, the sequel that they've made and that is coming out sometime in 2021, that will change and we will get to see some female combat aviators, which is going to be pretty cool. This scene is so incredible because it's just all about mood. I mean, it could have just been a stock credit sequence, but this is an expensive opening credit sequence. This is on an aircraft carrier with planes that cost $10,000 an hour to the production. Apparently it costs like $2 million or something to rent the planes, the aircraft carrier, and all the personnel that goes with it. But good for them for making it this legitimate. I mean, and good for the writers, Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr. They started with the first draft of the script after Jeffrey Katzenberg offered it to them, and they're the only credited writers, which is pretty unheard of. And right after director Tony Scott's credit, we kick into Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone. And it starts to feel like an MTV music video, which Tony was the king of. He was the king of commercials. He made great music videos. He was part of the British invasion of directors that stormed Hollywood out of the UK in the 80s. And pretty tough act to follow. Of course, his famous brother Ridley Scott preceded him. But Tony managed to make a mark and have his own distinctive style apart from his brother. Unfortunately, we lost Tony pretty recently. Apparently, he was working on the sequel to Top Gun just days before his untimely death, and I'm very excited about Joseph Kosinski, the new director, and seeing what he did with it. He's a fantastic director, but I guess it's a little bittersweet knowing that we'll never know what Tony would have done with the material. This whole setup here, this set, reminds me so much of Crimson Tide, which is another film that Tony Scott did a few years later. Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman just chewing up the scenery. Another kind of incredible military film. It's a lot of fun to watch. Here we're introducing the ominous Russian MiGs that will factor prominently in the legend of Tom Cruise's character Maverick. And here we have the introduction of our protagonist and sidekick. That is one of my wife's favorite lines. I hear it a lot from her. Tim Robbins, future Oscar winner. Very small role in this movie, but it's fun to see him. He's almost an Easter egg. He's in it so briefly. So this film was made in close collaboration with the Navy. They obviously needed the Navy's participation in order to do everything that they did to get all the planes and personnel and equipment, vehicles. And the Navy had input on the script, but apparently they made very, very few changes. It was more about accuracy. And it ended up being a pretty good commercial for the Navy, actually. They say that after the film came out, they saw a 500% increase in recruitment. They even set up recruitment booths outside movie theaters so they could capitalize on all those charged up kids saw themselves as flyboys and wanted to get out there and tear it up. I mean, it's a very seductive film in that way. I mean, who didn't want to be Maverick if you saw this at a certain age in your life, a certain point in time, and trying to figure out who you are, and then you see this film, all these confident, sexy, awesome people doing awesome things. I got the Maverick haircut, definitely got the aviators, and I had so many friends that had the same experience, that did the same thing. Never got the bomber jacket, though. That was a bridge too far for my parents. What amazes me about this movie is the amount of sweat everyone has on their faces. You can just picture the poor art department PA off to the side with 5 bottles of spritzer just flying in after cut and just spraying everybody's face down. I also just marvel at the editing and how they can cross-cut between all these different voices and different types of footage and the choreography of the airplanes to make this really pretty compelling sequence, even though I don't know quite what the hell is going on with. I mean, I get the gist, but where they are in the sky and where they are in relation to each other, that's a great shot. But I don't think that's the point of this sequence, right? I think it's all about, really, this is a great introduction to Maverick, and it's one of the best not only character introductions, but also a great way to kickstart the movie and kind of throw you into this whole new world. The world that we're in now, which is just naval aviation, but then the even more rarefied world of the Top Gun school and the idea of the best of the best. Apparently the guy flipping the bird there is the actual pilot doing it. Ended up becoming an astronaut. And the guy flying the MiG ended up becoming like a rear admiral. I mean, these are very high-ranking, very kind of important military folks. Admiral Robert Willard, I'm finding out here, commander of the United States Pacific Fleet from 2007 to 2009, and then transferring to United States Pacific Command. God, the internet's great. Poor Cougar, man, I feel it with the anxiety. If you ever had a panic attack or an anxiety attack, just driving on the 405, you can relate to poor Cougar here. My wife has basically been Merlin. She's like, Cougar, what's up? I need to pull over here? What's going on? Cougar, played by John Stockwell, who's a really good actor. He's been in a lot of stuff. He was in Escape at Dannemora, most recently. But also he became a director. He directed movies like that surf movie, Blue Crush. He directed Into the Blue. So here we're coming up on what is the defining character trait of our protagonist. There's stakes, low gas, he's got a direct order. But it's a touch and go, and Maverick is going to do what Maverick wants to do. James Tolkien plays Stinger, the commanding officer on deck there. I love that actor. He is only in this movie for 5 minutes, but he has such presence. You probably remember him from Back to the Future when he played Mr. Strickland. I don't think he was the principal in that. He was kind of like the school administrator. We'd call Marty McFly Slacker. Also a small role, but so memorable. James Tolkien. He turns 90 when Top Gun Maverick comes out. I hope they put him in it. You're kind of getting everything about a hero here. You're getting compassion. He's coming to rescue his buddy. He's being soothing and comforting to this guy who's having a really hard time. He's also breaking rules, so he's showing a lot of courage because of how much risk he's taking on with his fuel levels being so low, pissing off his commanding officer. If you really think about it, it kind of defines America in this point in time, and this idea of American exceptionalism. The idea that the rules don't apply to you or you don't play by the rules, no matter the consequences. Especially in a regimented world like the military where conformity reigns. The idea that Maverick is still unique, that he's an outlier. You can't really expect what he's going to do. He doesn't play by your rules. He plays by his own. This movie came out at the very beginning of Reagan's second term in office, and you can say that this movie really defines who America was, or at least who America saw itself at that time. And God, there's so much sweat dripping off of these guys. They kind of overdid it, right? I mean, Cougar I get because he's like worked up, but Anthony Edwards said that they cast Anthony Edwards so that he could break your heart in this. He's just so good, man. He's so likable. He's great comic relief, offsetting Maverick's kind of taking himself so seriously. Ooh, Admiral's daughter, Penny Benjamin. So fun fact, the actress Jennifer Connelly is credited on IMDb as part of the cast in Top Gun Maverick, the sequel. And her character name is Penny Benjamin. So I guess we are going to find out what happened between Maverick and the Admiral's daughter. Goose's sidelong look. You can't unsee the sweat once you see it. Once you notice it, you just want to throw these poor guys a towel. So many great lines. What a great line. Back in with Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone after just an incredible opening sequence, establishing our hero, establishing their situation, establishing their flaw, their fatal flaw. They say that with great characters, the thing that makes them amazing and watchable is sort of the flip side of their fatal flaw. In Maverick's case, it's pretty clear that, him being kind of a lone wolf and playing by his own rules is also what gets him into a lot of trouble, and they do such a great job of just establishing that right from the get-go in a really compelling, really captivating sequence that just throws you into this movie and just makes you invest in what you're watching and who you're following. This is just a very character-rich moment. They just do a really good job with looks and small moments of just establishing all the big personalities in the room. From our instructor here, played by the great Michael Ironside, to America's dad, Tom Skerritt. Tom Skerritt was also really good in Tony Scott's brother's film Alien, the original Alien. The testosterone, the bravado. This is like it's a little bit like a Western. Going into the bar and having everyone sizing each other up, intimidating each other. It's all about the head game. To me, this scene is just all about establishing the stakes and kind of framing the competitive aspect of this arena that we're now in, and seeing that Mav and Goose have pretty much gone from the fire into the frying pan, and a lot of the fun is just sort of seeing them navigate this. So many looks, man. Tom Skerritt's character Viper is based on a guy who was a huge advisor to the screenwriters, a guy named Pete Pettigrew. Oh, man. Anthony Edwards is amazing. This scene, for some reason, reminds me a little bit of Officer and a Gentleman. The idea of these kind of like groupies that would go to these places and kind of try to pick up the officers. Wearing his sunglasses at night like any good 80s heartthrob. I feel like this is the first time we saw Kilmer in this kind of a role. Prior to this, he was in a really great comedy called Top Secret, followed by another comedy, Real Genius, and this is the first time we see him kind of in this heavy role. Of course, he'd go on to play Jim Morrison in The Doors. He'd be in Michael Mann's Heat, a bunch of great movies. Just some arch character conflict. It's so great. This is such a great arena. And that's Rick Rossovich, who I also love in the film Roxanne, that was written by and starring Steve Martin in kind of a retelling of Cyrano de Bergerac. Rick Rossovich plays a kind of foil and love interest for Daryl Hannah. I love how they just brush off that tense encounter like, water off a duck's back. Great comedy repartee. And now we're moving into arguably one of the most well-known sequences of the whole film. Oft repeated, oft quoted, recreated. My brother-in-law, I found out later, was so obsessed with this movie as a little kid. He not only had the haircut, the sunglasses, he had the bomber jacket, which I wish I had had. But in second grade, he went up to his second grade girlfriend and sang this song to her in front of everybody, which, come on, man. How much balls do you have to have as a 7-year-old to do that? He's a great guy, and it's one of my favorite stories about him, actually. Tom Cruise, his biggest hit before this was Risky Business, where he also got on the mic, and I guess he lip-synced in that one, but he really made his bones with these kind of big musical moments, classic songs. Yes, what a great moment. The guy who keeps singing there, that's Clarence Gilliard, who we'll see later. He's Sundown, is his call sign. And we'll see him later on in the film Die Hard. He's one of Hans Gruber's henchmen. He's the computer hacker. And now we get to meet Kelly McGillis, the love interest who holds her own against Mav and ultimately wins his heart and vice versa. It was interesting to learn that her character Charlie is actually based on a real person that they patterned this character after. Christine Fox, I believe, is her name. Christine was a maritime air superiority specialist. Wow, I'm just reading this. And she ended up becoming Deputy Defense Secretary for the Defense Department. Her call sign was Legs. Not sexist at all. I hope. Probably was very sexist. But apparently when the filmmakers were doing research, she had come into the office to have a meeting. And that guy right there, that is Pete Pettigrew. He's the guy that Maverick's character is named after. His name is Pete Mitchell in the movie. Pete Pettigrew had a lot of influence over the development of the script. He's a Top Gun instructor. And he's also the inspiration for Tom Skerritt's character, Viper. It's cool that they gave him a cameo as the old guy. Interestingly, earlier they said that the prize for second place was in the ladies' room. And a few minutes later, here's Maverick going into the ladies' room. Foreshadowing? We'll see. From a cultural standpoint, this might have been cool in 86, but imagine if this happened today. I don't know, I guess there's places where this still happens, but I would imagine her reaction to this happening today would be a little different. But what's refreshing about this, I guess, to some degree, is that she kind of has control in there. even though she throws Mav a bone. It's an awesome shot. Talk about an establishing shot. I mean, so wide, really giving you a sense of space. I mean, that just feels like such an expensive shot. Right over Goose's shoulder is an actor named Adrian Pasdar. He's been in Heroes, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., bunch of stuff. Great character actor. It's such a great moment. It's such a great reversal coming off of the previous scene, and it just shows you, just again, what a great script, what a great job that the screenwriters did in economy, and just taking you from moment to moment, constantly escalating the stakes and pulling you deeper into the movie and investing more. I love how this just fuels the B plot, the romantic subplot. She pulled a reversal in a way by walking in and revealing that she's the advisor, the expert. And just a moment later, Maverick and Goose are flipping the script on her and putting her off balance. Another iconic line, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. How many times have you personally said that line in your life? It's one of those cases where you kind of wish the screenwriters could get royalties on every time someone quotes their movie, because this movie is just so jam-packed. Apparently Val Kilmer improv'd the bullshit on that, which earned a genuine laugh from everyone around him. I love how they lit Kelly McGillis here. She's kind of backlit with the kind of golden halo around her. She looks incredible. This was the second time mainstream audiences were seeing her in a movie. Just before this, she was in Witness playing a very different role, very unglamorous Amish woman opposite Harrison Ford. It's kind of a feat when you can make an Amish woman look sexy, which she did in spades. It's crazy that we didn't really see much of her. I mean, to go from Witness to Top Gun, and then she didn't drop off, but I guess I'm just not sure what happened to Kelly McGillis after this, and unfortunately she's not going to be in the sequel to Top Gun. It's kind of a bummer. She's just so good in this. Getting a real moonlighting vibe here. Sexual tension. And the competitive rivalry ratchets up again. There's just no fat in these scenes. They just go from strength to strength, ratcheting it up moment to moment, and it's really admirable. And I don't know if it's just me, but I've seen things that I loved when I was younger, revisited them years later like this, and they feel so dated, but I don't know. I feel like Top Gun's the exception. I feel like this film just really holds up. I mean, it's got its cheesy moments, of course, but I think it does stand the test of time pretty well. I saw somewhere this movie described as a cult film, which kind of blew my mind. it's kind of like the anti-cult film because it was a huge blockbuster. It was the number one film of 86. I mean, 86 was a good freaking year for movies. That's the year that Jim Cameron's Aliens came out. That's the year that Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, which was like the most successful Star Trek movie, it kind of made Star Trek cross over to more audiences, to a wider audience. You had Crocodile Dundee, you had Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield, which is one of my faves. Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out that year. The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy, Ruthless People, Karate Kid Part 2. Did I say Platoon? Anyway, huge year for movies. And Top Gun beat them all. It was the king of the hill that year. So to call it a cult film to me is hilarious. But I guess it's used to mean that it's only increased in popularity and found broader and broader audience after its initial release, which is maybe a very narrow definition of what a cult film is. But I guess it speaks to the idea that Top Gun is still capturing the imagination of audiences and still holds up. Apparently, going ballistic is not the right term to use here. It means something else. Going ballistic is the opposite of what Goose means it to say. It must be hard. I guess Christopher Nolan faced this with the Bane character in Batman that Tom Hardy portrayed, but having extended scenes where characters' mouths are hidden behind masks, it's kind of a buzzkill. I guess it really helps you because in post-production you can loop and have them say whatever you want and really finesse the dialogue as you need it and not rely on what you captured on set. But I think it's a little frustrating to not be able to see them emote. It's just all on the delivery of the line. In terms of the comedy beats, it does kind of almost have a sitcom vibe in terms of, and I mean that to say, sitcoms have kind of a metronome cadence to when the jokes need to land. And I haven't done this, but I feel like you can go through Top Gun and like every 5 minutes there's a joke. A lot of it comes from Anthony Edwards, but it just has an interesting tone because there's moments of real seriousness and even tragedy, as we'll come to find out, but also great levity. Rick Rossovich as Slider, Iceman's RIO, went on to follow Anthony Edwards to ER. He was the second cast member from Top Gun to go to ER. Not as long-lived as Anthony Edwards, who stayed on for 14 years, but still kind of interesting. That exchange right there is just so burned in the retina of people who fell in love with this movie way back when. Another oft-quoted sequence. It's fun because you can do it with a buddy. Just love the constant conflict. And here we have a recurring gag with the coffee. Great comedy. Who doesn't wish they had Michael Ironside's deep baritone voice? Loved him in Total Recall. No joy means that the enemy wasn't visible, apparently. What's great here is Tom Skerritt just so effortlessly slips into this role, this paternal role. It's just a feat of casting, because he is the dad everyone wishes they had. He seems stern but fair, a guy who, whose approval you would seek. And Maverick, he doesn't seem this broken up after, what happened with Cougar. But Viper really unsettles him. I mean, he stands to lose more here, but to me it's just a testament of really great casting and Tom Skerritt. All the love, all the props to Tom Skerritt. What's great here is the reinforcement of tradition, of legacy. That might be the first mention of Maverick's father. And it's thick with implication. Paired with the name Maverick, you're starting to get the real sense that, why he's a lone wolf. You get the sense that he might be a bit of an orphan. Up until now, it's pretty much been the Maverick show, but now we're starting to learn a little bit about Goose, and we're kind of deepening his backstory. And there you have it. It was a little expositional. They kind of laid it all out. Thought it was a little bit more interesting when it was more implied, but can't fault them. It's all about deepening the bond between Goose and Maverick. That might have been the first... no, I take that back. They had a couple of serious moments prior to this, but I love how they vacillate between jovial, fun, and then these kind of heavy moments. So much innuendo. HR violations left and right. So in real life, the Navy read the draft of the script in which Charlie's character was actually an enlisted officer and not a civilian. And it was because of the Navy's request that the filmmakers changed it to her being an advisor, a civilian advisor. So she's still kind of breaking protocol. It's still a little risky for her to do this, but it's not a blatant violation of military rules. I think that's one of 4 or 5 editorial changes that the Navy insisted on and the filmmakers acquiesced to. Another great line, not as quotable as several of the others, but I've heard this one get thrown around a little bit. Not necessarily at me, I don't stink, but... And here we have this moment, from what I understand, was filmed after principal photography, after post-production. I think it was after even a market research screening when they wanted to have, I guess, a beefcake moment. I don't know how much baby oil they use on this guy, but, they're back with the glistening skin motif. I don't care for this moment, not for any, weird reasons, but just because it just does nothing for the plot. It doesn't elevate, it doesn't move anything forward. To me, it's just kind of the first real fluffy piece of the whole script. I guess there was good reason why it was never included in the first draft. I guess you could say something about competition and just how this reinforces that these guys are just such competitive type A alpha males. So I guess there's that, but you're already getting that in a lot of the other scenes. I love that there's just this random cherry red, like 57 Chevy in the background. It's just another tiny little piece of eye candy. I love that Tony Scott just went all in on this. It certainly didn't help with some of the core audience members to have these guys shirtless, to like this golden hour shot with Cruise's perfectly coiffed hair. Apparently, Cruise didn't know how to ride a motorcycle when they cast him in this, and it was one of the many things that he didn't know. He didn't fly planes at that time. Now everyone knows that he's a big aviator. I guess it was because of this film that he got into that. But he learned to ride it. He went out, bought a motorcycle, got taught how to do it in the parking lot that day. And now I guess he's an avid motorcycle dude. And now we have the next major song cue. This is the big hit. This is... they're teasing it here, right? But this is Berlin's Take My Breath Away. Produced by Giorgio Moroder, who's this extremely famous soundtrack producer and composer, also known as the father of disco. Won an Oscar for this song, in addition to winning an Oscar for Oh What a Feeling, the Flashdance song that he did for the producers Simpson and Bruckheimer a couple years before this. I was like, can you imagine showing up late and then being like, yeah, I'm sorry I'm an hour late and I blew dinner, but I need to go take a shower in your shower. Like, who does that? Pretty ballsy to put a parrot in this scene, just for audio reasons alone. Unless it's a really well-trained parrot, it's just not going to squawk over someone's line. But again, got to give credit to Tony Scott just filling the frame with all kinds of interesting detail. Like everywhere you look, there's something interesting there. It's like he knew he had this shot to make this big film, and he just put everything he had into it. Good point, Tom Cruise. The music in this film is huge. The soundtrack for this movie obviously was a huge bestseller, and it's still pretty influential. A lot of them are classics like this. I can only imagine the budget for licensing. I guess I don't mind the exposition here. It feels more motivated because it's in that getting to know you period when you're dating someone and you share and you become a little vulnerable. So it's kind of motivated, but I just think it's more interesting to not know that much about Maverick, just to imply more than to tell. I guess if you have to have exposition, it's good to have it being spoken by two really sexy people after building up all this sexual tension between them and getting them closer and closer together. They get a pass. Once again, they're bringing in Take My Breath Away. Just teasing it. Using it as score, which I think it's really effective. It's really smart on the part of the music team. And I believe that's it for the original scripted production. There never was a love scene in the movie after that scene, which is just like all tension, no payoff, and you'll see that changed. This scene also is filmed in post-production. You'll notice Tom Cruise's hair is longer, and Kelly McGillis actually had a different hair color, which is why they tucked it under a hat. Apparently audiences didn't like that they never had like more overt love scenes. And so that motivated the addition of a couple of extra scenes, pickups, a few months after initial photography. Great moment. Ratchet up the tension. It's really smart, economical. You can tell they're intentionally trying to frame out Cruise's lid there so that we don't focus on the fact that his hair has been grown out so that he can star in Martin Scorsese's Color of Money with Paul Newman, which ended up getting released the same year as Top Gun. And his character Vince in that movie has a crazy pompadour. More sweat, more glistening. And here we have the introduction of Meg Ryan's character. And she just leaps off the screen. This is really the first time film audiences are introduced to Meg Ryan. And again, a feat of casting. She's just incredibly charming from the get-go. Before this movie, she was really only known for soap operas. As the World Turns, and I think she was in some horror movie, like some 3D. Let me see. Hang on, I got it somewhere. I don't. Anyway, it would be a couple of years before we would see her in When Harry Met Sally, but this is the first time American film audiences kind of fell in love with America's sweetheart, Meg Ryan. And I just got to give props again to the casting department on this one. Just extremely well cast. Okay, so this is a little dated technology. Glasses are a little dated too. I love the reprimand, and what we're seeing here is now the writers, the filmmakers are starting to take us into a territory where Maverick is getting checked and taking a few lumps as he goes, which is always a good thing for your protagonist. You always want to beat him up a little bit and always keep the goal further away. Amazing lighting. This is a forerunner of this type of lighting that now you see kind of everywhere, like a John Wick, like the blue here, and just it's just integrated really credibly and gives that feeling of a different world. I love the golden hour shots. I love the repeating pillar pattern of the previous shot. What's great here is how they're interweaving the A plot and the B plot. It's pretty unusual, the way it's so tightly integrated, the way that she complicates his A plot of wanting to be the best at Top Gun. And she is not only his love interest, but in a way she's sort of standing in the way of that. Great scene. Great turnabout. And a really well-earned kiss. So apparently there was a line here and not a kiss in the script. And Cruise forgot it. And he just rolled with it and went in for the kiss. And Tony Scott liked it so much that he kept it in the cut, obviously. It was a great kiss, leading us into this love scene that, as I mentioned earlier, was not filmed initially. They did some test screenings. That's a lot of tongue. They did some test screenings in like Orange County, California, and some other places, and audiences were kind of pissed that, that's too much tongue, sorry. Kind of pissed that he didn't, that they didn't consummate it, that they, the whole. Can you imagine this movie without this love scene? I don't really know what existed in the place of this, but I can understand why audiences would have been a little miffed that these two people that they're rooting for to get together never get together. It's not what you want. So they were right, I think, to go back, reshoot this. They did it in silhouette because of the way, as I mentioned in the elevator scene, how different everybody looked. I guess they had this scene. I guess they had the morning after, because here you're seeing her pretty well. So they just cut around the love scene. They just went from kiss to morning after. Which, come on, why are you leapfrogging the important parts? Oh, such a great line. Apparently, even to this day, at the Top Gun school, which relocated from Miramar, from San Diego to Nevada, apparently, if anyone quotes a line from Top Gun, especially "I feel the need for speed," they get docked. They have to pay money. I don't know what the dollar amount is, but you literally have to dip into your pocket and fork out money if you dare quote a line from Top Gun. Not sure what that's about, but how can you not? If you're a Top Gun, how can you not be quoting this movie left and right? Okay, so now they're in the sky with Daddy. Another awesome. I love that Maverick's got a spring in his step now after getting shit on the last couple of scenes because he's had his nookie with Kelly McGillis. Now he's got his mojo back. But he's up in the air with Daddy. Tom Skerritt's up there, Viper's flying, everyone else is shitting their pants. But we all know Mav is always going against the grain, so we'll see what he does here. Really great photography here. The mountain backdrop is awesome. This to me doesn't look like Miramar. Looks more like Nevada to me, but I guess they had to really differentiate between the ocean stuff because the movie's bookended by ocean dogfights or ocean air combat. They're just cranking up that adrenaline level here. These close call flybys. Feels a little unrealistic for a training exercise, but works for the movie. So the story goes that the origin of the movie is that Jerry Bruckheimer read an article in California Magazine in like 1983 about Top Gun. I think it might have been written by a Top Gun instructor maybe, but regardless, he took it to Paramount and then they shot for a writer. But the way he pitched it to people was Star Wars on Earth, which seeing the final product, it's kind of hard to imagine what this movie would look like if they hewed more closely to Bruckheimer's initial take on this, but I'm glad that they evolved the script. The writing team, Jim Cash and Jack Epps, they didn't live in the same city, and this was pre-internet, so they collaborated with Jim Cash, who was a professor in Michigan, working at home. He never moved to LA, and Jack Epps lived in Santa Monica, and he was the guy that was really into aviation, and he would go down and get in planes with Navy aviators and really was, kind of an adrenaline junkie. It still is, I suppose. He teaches at USC now. And he's the one who really, I think, did his research, started learning the stories, and the movie apparently evolved from all of that research and time spent. Once again, Maverick's getting shit on. Keeps getting worse for him, which is a good thing. We want that to happen to our protagonist. It helps us root for him. makes him an underdog, and then kind of hard to see Maverick as an underdog, but they're doing a good job of making us empathize and feel for him. Getting a little bit more exposition here into Maverick's past. I can't get mad at it. I guess it's all important for character development. Better than paper-thin characters like in a Michael Bay movie. Apologies to Michael Bay. If you're ever in San Diego, this place is still around, called Kansas City Barbecue. There it is again. Can't wait to see Jennifer Connelly in that sequel and find out about this admiral's daughter. Interestingly, Meg Ryan ended up getting married to Dennis Quaid, who played Jerry Lee Lewis in, I think, was it called Great Balls of Fire? I think the movie was called Great Balls of Fire, right? The Jerry Lee Lewis story. See, it all comes full circle with Top Gun. What a great moment. You just want to be part of this family, right? And if you've seen this movie, you know what they're going for here. You know why they're doing this. But it doesn't feel mercenary. It doesn't feel manipulative. A testament to the great acting and the charisma of especially Anthony Edwards and Meg Ryan together. They have such great natural chemistry. You really believe them. More mushy stuff, but needed. Awesome golden hour shots, magic hour. Not sure which one this is. I mean, wow. I think today they'd probably manipulate that a little bit, CG. I feel like this was done chemically through exposure in camera and chemically in the lab to get this, really amazing footage. If you're getting paid $10,000 an hour, you might as well get all your money's worth. And clearly, Tony Scott did that. I mentioned Michael Bay. We associate Michael Bay with Bruckheimer and Simpson. But I feel like somehow they lost a little bit of the soul. They got more into the veneer and the surface, and it became all about this flash and the polish, which, of course, Top Gun has in spades, but the effort that they put into creating more three-dimensional characters for what it is in a movie like this. I'm not trying to make more out of it, than it really is. But I feel like you could stack this movie up head to head against any Michael Bay movie especially of the Bruckheimer Simpson era, and you'd see a pretty marked difference in terms of substance and sort of earned emotion, earned pathos. Ugh, great choreography. Apparently, Tom Cruise wanted to fly F-18s for the sequel, and they pretty much let Tom Cruise do anything he wants these days. He can hang off the side of buildings and hang on to an airplane as it's taking off, and somehow they get the insurance to cover it. But the Navy put their foot down and would not let him get into the cockpit of one of their multi-million-dollar babies. So Tom was denied. Of course, they put him in other planes, but not these babies, or at least not the babies that they show in the sequel, which is not this plane. In case you didn't know, this is not good. I just want to make that abundantly clear for us. I wonder if that spinning shot it has to be CG, right? And then really do this. Oh man. Ugh. Heartbreaking. I don't know much about aviation or this stuff, but seeing that in the theater, being a total layperson, neophyte, and the way they captured him cracking into the canopy, when he ejects, is it called the canopy? That he hits the top of the glass there. I just remember that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach watching this in the theater. And as much as it hurts that they did this, because they made you care so much about Goose, and damn it, you get to meet his adorable family and cute as a button, Meg Ryan and the little kid. I mean, and like literally 2 scenes later, they do this. It's kind of a George R.R. Martin move, right? But I admire them for doing it. I think that this, I don't know if you would get a note from the studio on something like this when you make a character as likable as Goose and then pull him out like this, have the bottom drop out of the theater floor for the audience. Once again, they're using Scarrett really effectively in the paternal role here. He needs a father right now. And Scarrett shows up. Pretty savvy way to bring that in, and just the putting the hand on the shoulder gesture, moved it past kind of formal military gesture or formal military rules of move on, get over it. I love that they do that, and I love that they extend this sense of family and reinforce those dynamics. It's effective. They definitely cross the line a little bit with some of the on-the-nose dialogue, like, God, I want him back. It's not exactly a nuanced line. And nobody likes it when characters say exactly what they think or feel. But if you're 14 watching this in the theater in 1986, I mean, you kind of need things spelled out for you, so... God, I wish the music was indicating emotion a little bit more. I'm not quite sure what to feel here. Seriously, though, I remember choking back tears the first time I watched this, and my wife, who also loves this film, describes a similar vibe watching this. Oh man, it only gets tougher. Here we go. Man, just burying the knife deeper and deeper. Lord. I think that's it for Meg Ryan. I mean, she's in it for a blip. But how memorable. What a star-making turn. I mean, you watch this film and you're like, who is she? You feel like you know her, and you feel like you want to know her more. So I think originally the script called for a collision. There was going to be a crash, and the Navy reviewed it and didn't want that portrayed on film, and didn't want to take on blame in that regard, I guess. So the edit was made, and they are now going with this jet wash thing, which, from what I understand, reading about this, it's not exactly accurate the way it goes down, but it works for the drama. And come on, does anyone do a frowny eyebrow like Cruise? Like, wow, the eyebrows look like they're really working overtime. And here we have Sundown, Clarence Gilliard, as I mentioned. We saw him in Die Hard as Hans Gruber's henchman, hacker. He was really memorable in that. He also went on to co-star with Chuck Norris in Walker, Texas Ranger for a while. So he has a pretty good career. He's got a pretty good career. I assume he's still at it. This is great right here. I love this moment. Cool aviators, too. I love his glasses. It does call to mind that there isn't a ton of diversity in this movie. I think they remedied that in the sequel. It's a little bit more current and reflective, because this is a pretty lily white movie if you really look at it that way. Kilmer's so good here. Totally credible. It's a great moment. Somehow even that empathy, it still kind of comes off as a competitive jab. Somehow. It still works. And that's how we find out. Maverick washes out. It's not what we want. It's the lowest of low points. In terms of traditional screenwriting, I mean, this is pretty textbook in terms of what they say scripts should be like, what they say the mechanics, the clockwork of it. So everything's just falling apart at the seams. Goose is gone. Maverick feels like it's his fault, even though he's been cleared of it. He can't keep it together. He's going the way of Cougar. Or he's past that point, I guess. And now she's even leaving. She's going to Washington. It's kind of interesting that the movie just goes, 100 miles per hour. It's just racing through, and you're just white-knuckling it, trying to keep up. And then it hits this dark low point with Goose. This is not something that I would necessarily expect to find in like a Michael Bay movie or imitators that came later, more flashy kinds of things. So even as ham-fisted and a little vapid this film can be at times, and a little bit on the nose, I got to give him a lot of credit for trying in a movie like this to dig a little deeper and to really mine some some dark emotional territory. And I think that that's what contributed to the success of the film and why audiences gravitated towards it. They had a lot of fun, but then they also were moved, and they care about these people. And that's where the identification comes from. That's why I think people wanted to inhabit this world and why they want to revisit it over and over again. I feel like that's a significant cameo that I should know who that woman is. She feels like a non-actor. No offense. She just feels very legit as a military mom, as a military wife. Now it all comes out. I love that Scarrett's like cleaning his aviators as he's talking to him. Ray-Bans reported a 40% uptick in the sale of aviator sunglasses after this movie came out. And I hope that Tom Cruise got a stake in Ray-Bans, because in Risky Business that came out a couple years before this, Ray-Bans was struggling. They were about to discontinue the Wayfarer brand of glasses, and then, here comes Tom Cruise dancing in his underwear, and the sales went up 50% and kind of saved the brand, saved Ray-Ban, which is amazing in a very capitalistic sense. Could you afford this house on a military salary? Look at this. I love that it's sort of a humble house, but gosh, its perch is amazing. It's such a fatherly thing. Again, it's not a superior officer talking to, his junior, his charge. This is paternal. And some of the great films are about orphans and about that orphan syndrome. We all know that Spielberg made a mint off of exploring that territory of the orphan, or the fear of being orphaned. Kids Alone, whether it's Jurassic Park or E.T., Jaws, it's the primal urge at these really smart filmmakers have done on a massive scale, on a massive tableau. Tableau is probably the wrong word. Let's go with canvas. There we go. Ugh. And that was fast. Like, she's out of there. I don't know. I don't really get a sense of time frame here. And doesn't he look a little dopey and drunk? And I hope to God he's not drunk driving on that, Ninja, that Kawasaki. It's the fastest production motorcycle around. I guess he's just drunk with aviation. Also a brand of gin, aviation gin. Adrian Pasdar I believe his name is Chipper. Apparently he had no role in this movie, but his audition impressed Tony Scott so much that they basically created and expanded this little role. It was essentially just an extra, a featured extra, into dialogue role. So he must have really killed it in the audition. Iceman with the trophy. In real life, there actually is no trophy, but it really polarizes the film and gives a good goal for everybody. So I don't fault them for that indulgence, and good for the Navy for allowing that to play, even though it's not factually correct. Call to action. Here we go. All right. Great moment. Yes, we've got Stinger again. So happy they brought him back. Bookends the movie. Bookending is kind of a thing for Top Gun. Not only are we back on Stinger's ship, James Tolkien's character, but also Maverick is assigned to Merlin as the Rio, as his radar intercept officer. Merlin, as we remember from the opening scene, the opening sequence, was Cougar's Rio. All the sweat again, man. That ship has a real problem with air conditioning being on the fritz. You gotta love the dickishness of Iceman challenging the call to put Matt. He's already there. He's already been assigned, and Iceman's like, are we sure this is the right thing? Love it. And I just love the color timing, the way they made this look with the burnt orange and sienna, I guess, burnt orange and sepia. There we go. Oof, I'm getting my crayons mixed up, but yeah, it just creates this otherworldly, supernatural, again, the mythic quality that this film has is just reinforced and bolstered by the look that Tony Scott gave it. Can you imagine if this film was done a little bit more verite, a little bit more handheld, less stylized? You know, just between that and the music and the casting, it's just, you know, there's all this intentionality to these choices that you have to respect. More sweat. This poor bastard. How many shirts does this guy sweat through? I love that he's got tinted, like slightly tinted aviators on. It's still making him look cool, even though he's you know, kind of a nerd. What an awesome shot. There we go again. The hard-ons. Fighter jocks. I mean, you know, I guess if you're going to be in a cockpit, you're going to be a fighter jock. I guess the hard-on thing is pretty relevant. I guess it's necessary. Pre-1993, of course, before women were allowed in combat roles. Now, it shouldn't be about that. Just fantastic shots. So originally the enemy here was supposed to be not Russian. It was going to be North Koreans. Oof. So notice that missile shot that we just saw fire. Apparently the Navy only allowed Tony Scott in the production to do 2 missile shots to film them. That was all they could do. So unfortunately, they had to, in the editing process, use and reuse the same missile firing shot over and over again. This song cue apparently was originally supposed to be Bryan Adams. They pursued him pretty heavily for his song Only the Strong Survive. And Bryan Adams turned it down. Said it glorified war, the movie, and didn't want his music to be part of that. Which I do respect. He's not just doing something for the money or more exposure and fame. Bryan Adams, principled artist. So them using guns is kind of important because that's the whole point of Top Gun, is that they lost the art of dogfighting, which is using guns and not missiles. Everything kind of went soft on skills in Vietnam War because of the reliance on missiles. So that's why Top Gun was started. Here you see a lot of missile shots, but it's good that they sprinkled in a few guns. You got to have some guns in Top Gun. Come on. Must have been so complex to put together. There's that same missile shot. Well, it's the second missile shot, so it's a little bit of a different angle. Now, of course, they would have created 18,000 missile shots with CG because they can. But I love that they just sort of worked with what they had access to. And look, they had a lot of access to a lot of cool stuff. So it's not like I'm crying for them, but I love what limitations do for art, any medium. In filmmaking, it's always amazing to see just how resourceful people are and how they can repurpose, reuse. Poor Merlin, man. How many pilots does he have to talk down from a panic attack? So here's your Star Wars use the Force Luke moment, in a way. If Bruckheimer wanted this movie to be Star Wars on Earth, you could say that was maybe a slight homage to him kind of getting his mojo and reconnecting to the essential thing that grounds him and makes him the best he could be. Let's watch this missile. Oh. Okay, well, that was like 3 different shots of missiles. I'm not sure which one was the repurposed one. More good gunfighting that we need, more dog fighting. There it is. That shot we've seen before. And that one. But it is a pretty frenetic pace of editing. There's a lot of shots coming at us over and over again. And by this point, I'm so invested in the movie that I'm not keeping score. You're seeing lots of planes. You're seeing lots of banks and turns. So I think they hit it well. I don't think it really stands out to... I don't think anyone's just like watching this going, wait a minute, that missile, I've seen it before. Okay, we've seen that shot again. Oh yeah, okay. All right, I'm starting to see the pattern here. I wonder why they didn't like flop it. Maybe, flopping is when you just sort of reverse the position of the film and it just goes to the other side. You can't do it when there's text because then it looks like mirror image text. But that shot with the missile firing, it looks like they could flip it to make it look like it's firing from the other side of the plane. Let's see if they do that here. Oh, Iceman needs him. Yes. I feel like that shot we've seen before too. There it is. Another one. Oh, but he missed. So I don't know where they got that arcing missile shot. Yeah. I think they yeah, okay. Reuse. Good deal. Doesn't matter. Because when I watched this the first 150 times, I didn't notice it because I was so in on all this dope action going on. More fantastic, prodigious flying, thanks to Top Gun. Thank you, Top Gun instructors. American exceptionalism, breaking the rules, going your own way. Is what makes America great. Sorry, I said America. I meant to say America. There it is. That same missile shot. And I think that that explosion, I think is the same explosion too. Again, do we care? Come on. Do you care? All right. So they took us to the lowest lows, and now here we are. Highest highs, victory. So not only did we go to the depths of tragedy, losing Goose, but we lost our comedy mojo for a bit there because Goose is gone. But here we go, calling back an old saw from earlier in the movie. Again, the whole idea of full circle, completion. The idea that Maverick is coming full circle to where his father was. You know, being heroic as he lands, having brought in his buddies, being a good wingman. It's a good feeling. It's satisfying. And it's delivering those emotions that we want. And I know that this was on the page, that this was built into the script. And that's where, you know, to me, a script, a lot of people say it's a blueprint. But if it's not there, if the bones of it aren't there, it's not gonna translate on screen. Great line here. Oh my God, and they hug. And it's worth noting here that Quentin Tarantino has an amazing cameo in a movie called Sleep With Me that you've got to YouTube. If you haven't seen it, I'm assuming some of you know what I'm talking about, but he has a thing about Top Gun in that movie that is worth watching. And and this moment that we just saw is part and parcel of that, and it's freaking hilarious. Huge symbolic gesture here. Great shot and silhouette. Symbolic purging his demons and letting go. What's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? I love James Tolkien. I've said it before, I'll say it again. How'd you love to play poker with that guy, with that cigar, his delivery? That guy could read the phone book. Back at the Kansas City barbecue, still standing in San Diego. They still have some memorabilia. Some of it got torched in a fire, unfortunately, so they lost some Top Gun memorabilia, but they still have the piano that Goose was playing, and apparently they have a flight helmet that Maverick wore. Just a couple of white people. Boy, I'm really feeling the whiteness, I gotta say. That's one thing that has not stood the test of time for me. There is no diversity. The trailer for Top Gun Maverick is worth checking out because they are definitely representing in both gender diversity and sort of ethnic representation. Wonderful moment. Very earned. There's a famous producer known as the Script Whisperer named Lindsay Duran. She's got a TED Talk, and she's kind of the silent brains behind a lot of the most successful films. And she has this thing that she talks about, that what we tune in to movies for, the movies that we love, we tune into them because of the relationships, not because of the action, not because of the victory. I love curtain calls, by the way. But this film does it in spades, the same way that a movie like Dirty Dancing or The Karate Kid, you know, everyone wonders, she likes to say this, so I'm cribbing from Lindsay Duran, that when you think about The Karate Kid, what's the ending of the movie? Oh, it's when he does the crane thing and Daniel-san kicks Johnny in the face and knocks him out. Or the end of Dirty Dancing is when Patrick Swayze lifts baby up. But if you really look at those movies, those aren't the final moments. The final moments are relationship moments, relationship beats. And those are the beats, those through lines define the movie and define why we love them so much. And that's so true of Top Gun, too. It's a movie that you can dismiss as being just kind of fluffy and vapid and a little rah-rah for the military. And I guess it's fair to say that about some of it, but it actually has a ton of heart and a lot of really great character development and some strong relationship through lines that satisfy and pay off. So, thank you for joining me for Top Gun. That is the end of my commentary track. I hope you enjoyed it. And, if you feel the need for speed, indulge and think about Mav and go see Top Gun Maverick when it comes out at some point in the distant future when we're all out of this COVID freak out. God bless.
Watching every motion in my foolish lover's game. On this endless ocean, finally lovers know no shame. Turning and returning to some secret place inside, watching in slow motion as you turn around and say, take my breath away. Take my breath away. Dare I say, here at the sidetrack, truer words have never been, these true words and the true words from the beginning fully encompass the truth of Top Gun and Fabian's true words as well about during the commentary. Of course, which you just finished, and we hope you enjoyed revisiting the classic film from 1986. It is a classic now. That's the scary thing. Turn on AMC. You'll see Top Gun as one of the next generation classics. I want to thank Fabian Marquez for taking the time, not only for sitting down with us, but also watching the entire feature film Top Gun and enlightening us with some of the insights he has. And also, if you haven't seen Fabian's film Better Luck Tomorrow, it's worth a watch. Check it out on Hulu, Amazon Prime, Stars, and it's available for rent or purchase on Apple TV. Now for you, when it comes to you and the sidetrack, please share the word, subscribe, let the people that you care about know that you care about this. We'll be back next week with yet another feature-length commentary and some discussion with the people behind such tracks. Thanks for listening. This is Paul Davidson, and you've been listening to The Sidetrack.